Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I started working at this grocery store chain the summer after my freshman year of college. My hometown store where I worked in high school was great, but this new location turned out to be a nightmare from day one. The manager was fresh out of business school and completely incompetent. His dad worked at the regional office, so nobody could touch him. Everyone just called him by his actual name when complaining, but behind his back, we had plenty of other words for him. He'd installed his girlfriend as an assistant manager, but she barely showed up. The 2 times I saw her in the store, she was shopping. One time she walked out without paying for anything. The worst part was how he treated the high school kids. We had several teenagers working there who were taking summer school classes. He didn't care at all. He'd schedule them during their class times and tell them to figure it out themselves or find someone to cover. One girl came to him crying because she had a test, and he told her she'd have to skip it because he needed her on shift. The guy thought if the computer system accepted something, it was legal. This was back when computerized payroll was still new, so the system had zero safeguards. He made teenagers work until midnight and come in at 5 in the morning, made them work overtime constantly. When they complained, he threatened to fire them. Jobs were hard to find in that area, so people just took it. I watched kids break down crying because they couldn't go on family vacations. One guy got fired for going to his sister's wedding, even though he'd told the manager about it months ahead of time. It was a holiday weekend and nobody would swap shifts with him. The manager was never in the store. He'd clock in, handle a few urgent things, then disappear. He'd come back to do the bank deposits, then leave again until it was time to clock out. He dumped all his actual work on whatever assistant manager hadn't been fired yet or just random employees. When he was the only manager scheduled, he'd leave his override badge sitting on the desk in the office so we could grab it when we needed to fix register errors. All of this violated every company policy that existed. The company was obsessed with mystery shoppers. They'd get reports directly from the mystery shopping company and send down all these conflicting instructions. Thing is, mystery shoppers were incredibly easy to spot. They always went to the bakery first to price a special order cake but never bought it. Then they go to the bathroom, visit the fish counter, ask for a price check, and make you take something off their order during checkout. There were other tells, but those were the obvious ones. My last week before heading back to college, I spotted an obvious mystery shopper. She even had a notepad. The manager had left right after opening. His girlfriend was supposedly working but nowhere to be found. The other assistant manager had been fired the week before for something that was the manager's fault. The only other cashier was at lunch. When the mystery shopper came to my register with an item that needed a price check, I rang it up instead of hitting the price check button. Oops! Now I needed the manager's override badge. I grabbed it from the office and fixed the error. Then I threw that badge as hard as I could across the desk. It sailed into the mess of cables behind the desk in the corner. The other cashier got back from lunch right then. I told her things were about to get interesting and she might want to go homesick. She laughed and said she wanted to watch. Besides, the lunch rush was coming. We had a construction site nearby and lots of workers came in for our hot, prepared foods. The lunch crowd started arriving. The mystery shopper made it to my register and asked me to remove something from her order. I turned on my help light. Nothing happened. I called for the manager over the intercom using his full name. The other cashier told me to just get the badge from the office and said he must be doing the money drop. I pointed out that was against company policy. She rolled her eyes and said that's what he told us to do. I went up to the office and made a big show of looking for the badge. I called down asking if she had it. She said she didn't. She abandoned the order she was ringing up and came to help look. That's when things went sideways. I'd planned to just give the mystery shopper a bad experience to report. My co-worker had different plans. She was going scorched earth. She apologized to the mystery shopper but explained she'd need to get in her line now. I couldn't void the transaction or log into 2 registers at once, so we'd pack everything up and she'd help her soon. Now this was somewhat bogus. We could unplug the registers to force a logout. It was a stupid hack, but it worked. The manager and mystery shopper probably didn't know that though. The mystery shopper seemed thrilled. She smiled and scribbled in her notebook while I loaded her cart. Then my co-worker accidentally rang up a gallon of milk about 6 times. She made a big show of being upset that she needed the override card and asked where the manager was. We apologized to the growing line of customers. We had no idea where he was. We sent someone to check the back room and the parking lot in case he was on a smoke break. Nothing. Customers started getting angry and demanded we call a manager. We explained we tried all his phone numbers. The only person above him was regional, and we had strict orders not to call them. We could give out the number though. The phone was right there. Several people called. We got yelled at constantly, but honestly we were having the time of our lives. It took regional 2 hours to send someone who could clear the registers. Nobody else had system permissions. The manager still hadn't shown up. The regional guy overrode everything, but the damage was done. We'd missed the entire lunch rush. No hot food sold. Our numbers for the day were going to be terrible. The regional guy was on the phone trying to figure out how to cover this up for his boss, who was the manager's father. He decided to blame it on a computer outage. I think they broke some equipment on purpose to make it believable. The manager came in after I'd already clocked out, but I heard the regional guy was still there doing his job. The next few days were rough, but I was leaving anyway. My co-worker didn't care because she'd been doing the work of a head cashier without the pay or title. I kept in touch with her to hear what happened next. A few weeks later, an audit team from the national office showed up. The mystery shopper report didn't match the computer outage story. Something was obviously wrong. They went through the books and found all the labor violations. Minors working overtime, working too late and too early. They interviewed employees and found out about the scheduling during school, the constant absenteeism, the vacation denials. The store was always short-staffed because people quit soon as they found anything else. Then they noticed an assistant manager on full-time payroll who nobody had ever seen work. She clocked in and out within seconds of the manager every shift, but was never there. Pretty obvious what was happening. I don't know if they covered up the labor violations to avoid fines. I was too young to know I should report them separately. But the manager, his father, and his girlfriend all got fired or quietly resigned. The store became functional again after that. My co-worker got a better job within the year. I never worked retail again. I've been running the shop with my dad since I got back from community college, learning the business from the ground up. We handled everything from oil changes to major engine work, plus towing calls at all hours. The shop sat right off the highway, which meant we got plenty of business from truckers passing through. 3 years back, we got a call about a tractor trailer that got itself stuck trying to turn around in the elementary school parking lot. The driver had somehow managed to bust the trailer hitch clean off. I drove out with the wrecker and brought the trailer back to the shop while Dad started hunting down parts. That hitch turned out to be old army surplus, which meant the parts weren't exactly sitting on shelves at the local auto store. Dad had to make 2 separate trips into town 40 miles each way to track down what we needed. Between the driving, the parts hunting, and the actual repair work, we burned up the better part of 2 days getting that trailer roadworthy again. The company name on the side read Western Lumber Company out of Colorado. When Dad called the boss to let him know the job was done, the guy sounded friendly enough. He told Dad to just send them the bill and they'd get a check out to us. 2 weeks later, the check showed up. Dad opened it at the counter, then just stood there staring at it for a minute. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me they'd only paid half and marked it paid in full. I asked if they could do that, but Dad said they just did. We talked about pursuing it, but the lawyer fees would have cost more than what they shorted us. Dad filed the paperwork away in a folder he kept for occasions like this. He never forgot a slight, and I learned that day, neither would I. Winter came around 3 years later. I was in the office doing paperwork when I heard this massive bang from out on the highway. Through the window, I watched the big rig coast into our parking lot, engine sputtering but clearly dying. I grabbed my coat and headed outside. The driver climbed down looking completely baffled. He told me he didn't understand what happened because the engine was running but the truck wouldn't pull at all. I popped the hood and started diagnostics. Took me a while, but I finally figured it out. The crankshaft had snapped right in the main bearing between cylinders 3 and 4. The front half was firing away, but the back half was just dead weight. Then I noticed the name on the door. Western Lumber Company. Colorado plates. I walked back inside trying to keep my face neutral. I told Dad he was going to want to see this, and when he came out and saw that company name, a slow smile spread across his face. We hooked up the tow truck and pulled the tractor into the bay. The driver seemed like a decent guy, just doing his job, so we told him he could sleep in the cab while his company sent out a mechanic. No point making him suffer for his boss's choices. The mechanic showed up the next day, young guy who clearly knew his way around an engine. He pulled the crank, replaced it, and all the bearings, got everything buttoned back up. Took him 13 days working in our shop using our tools, our heat, our phone to call back to Colorado for advice. When the job was finally done, I called the lumber company. The boss started with his usual line about how we should just bill them like normal. I cut him off and told him no, we needed cash up front this time. There was silence on the other end, then he asked what I meant. I explained that the bill was substantial for towing, shop use for 13 days, tools, equipment, and phone charges, and I needed payment before the truck left. The boss went quiet for a second, then asked if this had anything to do with that trailer repair a few years back. I told him of course not, that this was just our policy for certain circumstances. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end. More calls went back and forth between him and the mechanic. The bill was steep, no question about it, but it was fair for the work and time involved. Meanwhile, their trailer sat out front where we'd parked it on some 2x8s to keep the dolly from sinking into the soft winter ground. Finally, the boss agreed to wire a cashier's check. We waited. The mechanic waited. The driver waited. When word came that the check was on its way, the mechanic got a call from his boss with instructions to get the rig hooked up and ready to roll the second that payment cleared. I guess the boss was eager to get his equipment out of our parking lot. The mechanic, clearly stressed and probably getting an earful over the phone, rushed outside to fire up the tractor. I watched from the office window as he backed it up toward the trailer. He was moving fast, real fast, and I saw immediately what was about to happen. He slammed the fifth wheel under the trailer hard, bumping it right off those 2x8s. The dolly sank into the soft mud like an anchor. But the real problem was, he'd forgotten something in his hurry. He never connected the air hoses, never set the trailer brakes. That rig wasn't going anywhere without a tow, and we both knew it. I walked outside, climbed into our big wrecker, and parked it sideways right in front of his tractor. Blocked him in completely. Then I locked it up, checked that my .38 was secure in my belt, and smiled at the mechanic before heading back inside. The phone started ringing immediately. The mechanic was outside pacing. More calls to Colorado. More calls back. Dad walked in from the back and asked what was going on. I told him we were teaching an old lesson about paying bills in full. The cashier's check arrived an hour later. Full amount, no games this time. I handed over the keys to the wrecker and we pulled their dolly out of the mud free of charge. The mechanic didn't make eye contact when they finally rolled out. I'd spent the last years saving up for my gaming PC, taking on part-time jobs between classes, and skipping nights out with friends. Every component was handpicked, every wire carefully placed. Building it myself had been one of my proudest moments, and that computer meant everything to me. My university sat just 15 minutes from my parents' house, so moving out never made much sense. Why throw away money on rent when I could save it for things that mattered? Plus, my mom's cooking beat instant noodles any day. That Sunday started like any other. I was deep in sleep when my mother barged into my room around 9 in the morning. She told me that my aunt was coming over for lunch today with the kids. I asked which aunt, already dreading the answer. She said it was my father's sister. My stomach dropped. Out of all my relatives, she was the one I dreaded seeing most. Every family gathering turned into a performance where she'd brag about her children's achievements while somehow making everyone else feel inadequate. But family was family, and saying no wasn't really an option. I asked what time they'd arrive, and my mother said around 11. She told me to get up and help her clean. 2 hours of frantic tidying later, the doorbell rang. My aunt swept in like she owned the place, her 2 kids trailing behind her. The older one seemed fine, quiet, and polite, but the younger one, an 8-year-old bull of chaos, immediately started touching everything in sight. Lunch was bearable. My mom had made her famous roast chicken, and for a while, everyone was too busy eating to start any drama. Afterwards, we gathered in the living room. My aunt launched into a detailed story about her eldest son's academic achievements while I nodded along, counting the minutes until they'd leave. I'd left my bedroom door open and my computer running. Big mistake. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the younger kid slipping away from the group, heading straight toward my room. Panic shot through me. That computer had cost me countless hours of work, and I wasn't about to let some kid mess with it. I followed him down the hallway and found him standing in front of my setup, eyes wide with excitement at the glowing monitors. He asked if I had any games. I told him I did, but they weren't for him because they were grown-up games. He whined that he wanted to play. I apologized and said he couldn't because the games weren't appropriate for kids his age. His face crumpled immediately. Before I could say anything else, he bolted out of the room, running straight to his mother in the living room. He complained to her that I wouldn't let him play games. My aunt's head snapped toward me, her expression already hardening. She told me to let him play some games because he had nothing else to do here. I explained that the games I had installed weren't for his age because they were violent and had disturbing content. She insisted again, saying her little boy wanted to play and asking if I couldn't just let him. I repeated that I was really sorry, but these games weren't suitable for children. Her voice rose sharply, cutting through the comfortable atmosphere in the living room. She yelled that we were guests in this house and I needed to show some respect. She demanded I just let him play. Heat flooded my face. My mother looked uncomfortable, but she didn't intervene. My aunt's older son stared at his shoes. Everyone was watching me now, waiting to see what I'd do. Looking back, I should have just pulled up some free online games and let him play those. Simple solution, everyone happy. But anger was clouding my judgment, and something petty and vindictive took over. This computer represented years of my life, my hard work, my sacrifice. No way was I letting some spoiled kid treat it like a toy at an arcade. Plus, she'd insisted so strongly that he play my games specifically. Fine. If she wanted her son to play my games so badly, he could play my games. I agreed and told the kid to come with me. The kid bounced excitedly behind me when I led him back to my room. I sat him down in my chair and opened my game library, scrolling past the shooters and strategy games until I found what I was looking for: Outlast, a horror game famous for its disturbing imagery and terrifying atmosphere. The game literally opens in an abandoned asylum filled with deformed patients and pools of blood. I loaded it up and handed him the mouse. I told him to have fun and stepped out of the room but stayed close enough to hear what was happening. The intro music started playing, dark and ominous. I heard him clicking around, the sound effects of the game echoing through my speakers. Heavy breathing, distant screams, footsteps in empty hallways. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. That's how long it took. A shriek erupted from my room, high-pitched and terrified. The kid came tearing out, face pale and streaked with tears, running full speed toward his mother. My aunt jumped up from the couch, immediately pulling him into her arms. She demanded to know what the hell I'd made him play and asked what was wrong with me. I reminded her that I'd told her before that my games weren't for young children and were for adults, but she wouldn't listen to me. She accused me of doing it on purpose. I pointed out that she'd insisted he play my games, and those were my games. She grabbed her purse and started shoving her kids toward the door, the younger one still sobbing into her shoulder. She announced they were leaving and that this was unacceptable. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence fell over the living room. My mother stared at me for a long moment, and I braced myself for the lecture. Then she started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that had her wiping tears from her eyes. She said that my aunt had literally demanded I let him play my games and asked what she'd expected. My father, who'd been quiet the whole time, shook his head with a small smile. He commented that maybe next time she'd listen when someone gave her a warning. I went back to my room and closed Outlast. My computer completely unharmed. Worth it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.